So I'm Tyler Standiford. I'm a professor in the exercise science department. And I've been on the committee that reviews kind of these student grants for, I guess, since the first semester I was here. So about 7 years now. So I have a lot of years of one, kind of reviewing these grants as they come in, but also I've been able to, help some of my students secure some of these grants as well. And so Shelly had asked, and we thought it'd be a great idea if we did something like this where you could come and learn a little bit more about it. And so we thought it'd be a great opportunity to just kind of walk through the process from kind of where a student starts, how to find the applications, what things to pay attention to in the application. So Baker's going to kind of walk you through that to begin with. After that, I'll kind of step in and show you kind of from more of maybe a faculty role in terms of how to support, and also maybe a little bit of a reviewer role. But I will say there is a big benefit of having someone who knows what we're looking for. And so really my goal today is to kind of give you all those tips and tricks that I'm giving to my students because I sit on that committee. So I'll kind of let Baker take it over from here.
Hi guys, like Tyler said, I'm Baker. I'm a biology major, but I do my research with Dr. Standiford in the biomechanics lab that they run here. We do a lot of running studies, so we have a fancy treadmill and we bring in runners to collect their data and we do some pretty cool stuff there. But I've been at UVU for 1 year now. I transferred to UVU from a different university. And at that other university, I did a year of undergraduate research, but no one there ever talked to me or mentioned grants or the possibility of funding in any way. So I've loved my time here at UVU because there's such a focus here about helping the students and getting students the funding and the materials they need to do the research they're passionate about. So that's one thing that's just really amazing about UVU. So I just encourage any of you students here to really find things you're passionate about, talk to professors about it, and they'll help you through this grant writing process to get the funding you need. Because me personally, I have a wife and a baby, and if I wasn't getting paid to do my research, I'd have a much harder time rationalizing putting my time into it. But because I can get paid for it, it makes my research really enjoyable and really a good situation for me and my family as well. But I just want to first pull up the UVU website and as a student, walk you through the steps it takes to apply for some of the grants we have here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is if you just Google UVU grants or UVU undergraduate research, the first thing that's going to pop up is this page that you can go into called UVU student research. And if you can read through this information here, it gives some information about the different grants that are offered. Some of the most common ones that you can apply for are the ERSCA grant, the BOTS grant, the TEALS grant, and those are the three I'll focus more on because I don't know much about the CRFS grant. But today we're going to walk through specifically the ERSCA grant, and the BOTS and TEALS grant have a very similar application process. So if you see the ERSCA grant process, you'll be kind of familiar as well with the BOTS and TEALS process. And one thing I want to point out here as well is there's a big difference between there's two kind of main grants you can get. There's the research funding grants, but there's also what's called a dissemination grant down here. Research grants will be funding that you can use to buy supplies or pay yourself to do a project, whereas the dissemination grants will be for presenting your data, which can pay for your travel to and from conferences and some food and other things. So just make sure when you're filling out the application, you're applying for the correct grant that you need, whether it be a dissemination or a research funding grant. So we're just going to go in here and we're going to open up the ERSCA research grant application. And again, it has all these instructions that you should read through on your own time. You don't have time to go through all of them right now. But first, when you open up the page to apply for an ERSCA grant, you're going to want to fill out your profile. That's just some basic information about you. And then you can come down here to begin the application. And I kind of want to preface all of this by just saying the system we have is pretty good. And if you just follow the instructions exactly and read really thoroughly, you can't really go wrong with these applications. There's just really good information all along the way that'll guide you through the process. So just make sure you're reading all the information as you go through. So right here you can see, another thing real quick is you're going to want to start these processes really early, well before the submission deadline, because whenever you submit one of these applications, You're going to need 3 different signatures for these to go through and be reviewed by the committee. You're going to need your faculty mentor signature, the financial manager of the college signature, and the department chair signature. So if you start this application the day it's due, it's really not very likely that it's all going to be able to get finished and get through the committee. So start this process weeks in advance. You can see you can just put in this information about the grant funding years, and you can select the application type, whether it be research or dissemination. And yeah, so right here we get down to the next few sections. You're going to want to put in your name as the principal investigator of the project. And then your UVID, phone number, other information. Here it's important that you put in your faculty mentor's information and the department chair's information, and make sure you put in their emails correctly, because that's how the system knows to send your application to them for review and signature. So if you somehow mess up their emails here, then they're not going to get your application to review. So make sure you really fill out those parts carefully and correctly. Another important thing is whether you're submitting this application as a team or an individual. If there's a team, you can get, like the funding will be for a specified amount, but you can get a whole team of you applying for one grant, and then the grant will just be split between you depending on how many hours you each clock in. So if you are a team, you have to enter in all of the co-investigators here. College, put in your college that the research is under, title, and then here we get down to the more kind of difficult information of the application. It begins with the project abstract. And what the abstract is kind of an overview of the whole research process that you're going to be doing. You don't want the section to be too long because it's an overview, but you're going to want to kind of briefly hit every aspect of the application as far as the hypothesis, methodology, dissemination, purpose. That can all go in the abstract, but keep it brief, and then the following sections will be the longer, more in-depth and detailed sections. So after the abstract, you're going to fill out the purpose or the hypothesis. You can just do one or the other. Yeah, keep it simple. I wouldn't make these too long, because just keep them simple and concise and make sure you're hitting what the most important details are of your research project. With the methodology, this section can be kind of tricky, because here you're going to be balancing writing in a way that the committee, who are not experts in your field of research, they're going to want to read this and understand it, but you also have to show that you are like a scientific student who knows what you're talking about. So you're going to want to take a lot of time with this methodology section and use wording that shows that you're a smart individual who knows what you're talking about, but you're not talking so scientific that someone who's not an expert in your field can still understand what you're saying. And then here we have dissemination. This is just going to here describe what your plans are with the research and data you collect, whether you're going to be going to conferences or whether you're going to publish it in a journal. That can all go in this section. And then one of the last sections is the discipline importance, where you're not talking about why the research is important to you. You're talking about why the research is important to your field of study. So we do a lot of running studies in our biomechanics lab. So what we talk about in this section for the most part is, why is this specific study going to help runners in general, or why is this going to broaden our knowledge about running biomechanics in general. The last part of the application is going to be your budget request. This can be a tricky part for a lot of students. I know it was for me, and I needed a lot of help to figure it out my first time. But what you are going to want to do is, there's an actual template they have already built for us to fill out as students. And so I'll show you the template and what it looks like, but it's available for download in this section. So if you just click here, it'll take you to the exact template that you need to fill out, which is right here. And it has, again, all of the information that you're going to need. You can just fill it out, fill out everything that it says to. A couple of tricky things about this is, one, you have to calculate in what's called, I wrote it down here. Basically, if you're hired as a student employee, which will happen once you receive a grant, you have to minus out 8% of your total grant to go towards like worker comp stuff. For the university to hire you, they're liable for you as an employee. And so 8% of your grant will go to the university to cover any costs that they have in their HR departments and stuff. So subtract 8% out of your total grant. And then as you fill this out, especially, so we have some student salary information here that you can see. You pick an hourly wage and then the amount of hours you're going to be working. And then here's that 8% of student benefits I talked about. And then materials and supplies. If you're going to be ordering equipment with your grant, then you're going to really need to break those things down one by one. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to be using $1,000 of my grant to buy supplies. You have to be really specific in order for the committee to want to approve your grant. So you're going to want to make a list of all the supplies you need and the approximate costs each thing is going to be. And you can put that down here in an hourly breakdown, a materials and supplies breakdown, an equipment breakdown. And you can just, you're going to want to be really specific with those in order for the committee to see, oh, you really know exactly, you've really thought out your project and you know exactly what supplies you're going to need. The last thing after the budget is, depending on what your project is, there's a committee called the IRB committee, and this committee has to approve research done if there's any animal or human research subjects involved in the project. And so it's a whole nother application process that we're not going to cover today, but just be aware that if your project is going to be using human subjects, which I think a lot do, you're going to need to fill out this IRB application, which again, you want to start early because it's just going to be another couple of weeks of filling out this application and getting approval for that. But I think that's all the information I have for you today. That's kind of, again, just the student view of the whole application process. My advice to you is to start early. I work up in the College of Science Dean's office where the college financial worker works, and she has her door open and she meets with a lot of students, and I overhear a lot of students going in there with problems and on their budget that she's trying to work out with them. So you're going to have to meet with her to get your budget approved as well. So just be aware of that. And yeah, that's all the information I have for you. So I'll turn the time over to Tyler now.
Awesome, cool, thanks, Baker. That part of meeting with the financial manager is really key. Again, every college has their own financial manager, but we even try and put it in here. You must meet with your financial manager. Like ours in the College of Science, if she gets an email that it went to her and she hadn't met with Baker, like I would get a phone call from her pretty quickly, which it's not my favorite thing. And so make sure you go meet with that financial manager to kind of set the stage of how to kind of work out that budget. I think that's a really important thing. What I kind of wanted to do from my standpoint was actually walk you through kind of what a successful grant looks like. Because I think seeing, what we're looking for as a committee, kind of diving into these things that Baker brought up, will really help you as you kind of are prepping your grants or as you're helping your students to prep those grants. Okay, so this is just Baker's grant that he received for his TILS grant. In similar process to the ERSCA grant, you can see all of his information. He got the emails correctly. Okay, so in the project abstract, the one key I would say from a committee member's standpoint of reading these, make sure that it's your students, or if you are the student, make sure it's you that's the one who's writing this. Okay, these are meant to be student grants. And it's very easy as a committee member to know when the advisor has written this stuff and just kind of passed it on to the student. It's so obvious when those things take place. And so really, obviously help your students write this stuff. So Baker, again, started very early on in the process. He came to me with kind of this abstract that he had written, and we tweaked it, and I gave him some edits on it, but I did not do the bulk of this writing, right? And I think that's a real key, because you're going to be scored lower when we look at it, and it just comes off as a lot of technical jargon that kind of fits more what we'd expect the faculty mentor to produce. I will say this, I want to make sure that I'm really clear on this. A lot of what I'm speaking to is to the College of Science or maybe engineering and technology, because that's what my background is. But I will say this about these grants. I think we've really done a wonderful job being aware that there are other colleges on campus who may not do traditional research the way we have it here, but they're doing some incredible scholarship. So this is for like, the College of the Arts and the Humanities and the Social Sciences. We give grants to everyone across the board. And so you can tweak that to fit that. We've given some wonderful grants to students who are like creating a piece of music in their field. And they write a nice abstract about why they're doing it and what aspects of music they're incorporating into this composition that they're putting together. And for them, the dissemination might not be taking it to a research conference. It might be that there's a performance at the end of the year where this group is going to perform their piece of work. And we score that just as highly as we score any of the other grants. And so I don't want this to be thought of as well, hey, if I'm not a science student, this is impossible. I'm never going to get it. Those grants, honestly, might get funded at a higher rate than some of our science grants because there's so few of them. So we'd love to see more of those grants as a committee. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. Same thing would apply, right? As we're writing these abstracts, make sure that you're writing it to people who maybe don't have a background in the arts, but can still see the importance of what you're trying to do. Okay? So this is Baker's abstract. Again, writing it on his own. Purpose and hypothesis. Again, a simple purpose here, a simple hypothesis. This isn't meant to be a really long, engaged process. The methodology was the one that Baker really brought up. And all we're trying to make sure with this is that this is worthy of these funds, right? Again, not everyone is going to be able to secure a grant. And so we want to make sure through this methodology that this is something that's rigorous at the undergraduate level. Again, be it science or the arts. And so this is where he talked a little bit about some of the systems that we used. For example, ground reaction force data and this Vicon system and these cameras, but it's not like he's going into this long, drawn-out, hey, this is exactly how we're going to do it, and here are the mathematical equations behind how we're calculating these forces and things such as that. I think he did a really good job of making it that way. He mentioned the dissemination. I want to reiterate this. The specificity of the dissemination, meaning what are you going to do with this project when it's done? In our reviews, we score very highly things that are going to go beyond the confines of Utah Valley University. There are some great places for you to share your research on campus, and that's wonderful. But if you're stacked up against someone who's going to go take it to a regional or national conference, theirs is going to be scored higher. So, and if you're a student or if you're a faculty member supporting students, try and target a conference where they can take this and really kind of showcase UVU beyond here. The same would go also for kind of the UCUR and NCUR, which those are acronyms for the Utah Conference of Undergraduate Research and the National Conference of Undergraduate Research. Again, those are wonderful, but what we've found as we've supported these grants is that when students go to discipline-specific conferences, their interactions are incredible, right? Even actually, so Baker took a project with me this last semester to a conference in Colorado. It was a biomechanics-specific conference, and the keynote speaker there was a professor at the University of Utah Medical School. She did biomechanics research up there. Baker is a pre-med student. She came by his poster and talked to him because it was a small enough conference that she could. Him and another one of our students who were pre-med got to interact with her for 20 minutes maybe. I mean, they chatted, they exchanged information. She's like, yeah, I'll keep my eyes out as you come up. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. And those are just the kind of things that we see happen more at discipline-specific conferences than just at something at UVU or something at UCUR or NCUR. So that's why as a committee, we tend to try and score those a little bit higher. So be very specific about it. Again, what is the name of the conference? What is the year? Those types of things. A specific journal, if that's something that you're going to do. Or again, if it's an arts or humanities project, how you're going to disseminate that. How are you going to get that beyond the confines of UVU? So as specific as you can be in that section, that's really important for us. Discipline importance. This is one where we really have to understand that we're not the same discipline as you. So I think this is where it really creates some ownership on the student and faculty mentor to make sure that this comes out in this paragraph where we can see that, hey, I don't understand anything about mayflies, but when this project came in, I can see that it's important to kind of what they're studying there. So that's your chance to really say, hey, this is important, and this is my chance to tell you how important it is. Okay? On the budget requests, just a couple of things to pinpoint out. Student hourly wages is where we get the very most questions as committee members. I think almost every time we meet to review these grants, the question comes up, and it's exactly this. Are these hours enough for the grant? Like, that's every single time. They just said, cool, 200 hours. Well, did they just grab that out of thin air? Or is it really going to take 200 hours? And so this is where, and you can see here in Baker's justification, he knew this was an issue because I told him it was an issue. And then we spell it out individually. So I'm going to collect, every data collection is 2 hours, 30 minutes for this, 1 hour for this, 30 minutes for this. We're going to do 30 subjects. That's going to get me to 60 hours. Now I'm going to have to go do this in post-processing and so on and so forth. So spell those hours out with as much detail as you possibly can, because then we don't have to go in there and just say, well, did they pick 150 because that's what got them to the hours that they needed to fill up the grant limits. Okay? And typically grants for collecting and conducting research can be a combination of both equipment and hourly wages. It could be all hourly wages, it could be all equipment. Let me also again point out this thing. When I see a project that comes in just straight up equipment, again, this isn't always the case, but sometimes a little red flag comes out where I think, is that just kind of a professor grabbing a student and they want to get $5,000 worth of equipment in their lab? And so they just say, hey, do this grant. I think we really like to see a balance of both. We really want to see students get paid for the research. This is meant to be a student grant. There are other entities for professors to get funding for the things that they need. This is meant to reward students. And so I almost think like if you don't have student pay in there, you've got to really justify why you need that equipment so that hey, this is the only way they're going to be able to do this project, and they're really passionate about that project. Okay. So on that budget, I think that's an important thing. And again, just meet with those budget managers. It makes life much easier. We do specify the amounts that you can get. So again, at the hourly rate now is $18 an hour for students, which I think is a pretty good rate for students. That we just changed the numbers. So again, I told Shelly I would ask her if I have any questions. So if an individual applies for conducting research, do we move it to 2,500? So 2,500 is the max for an individual. If you're a team, it's $5,000. Okay. Again, with that team one, as Baker kind of brought up, that can be this situation where you need multiples at the same data collection, or you're both a big part of it, so you can divvy out those hours that way. But those are kind of the numbers. And then for dissemination, meaning that grant to just take your research somewhere and present it, that now individual is it 15? Shelly's like, I don't know. It's more. It's wonderful, right? I actually had a student do a dissemination grant here. She got enough money to go to, she went to Helsinki, Finland. Again, we're not sending every student to Europe. I don't want that to be what you think we're doing. But it was really neat. She did a project in dance biomechanics, and there's this international conference of dance science, and it was in Helsinki, Finland. And so she applied for a grant, she got the grant, and was able to get most of her trip paid for to go there to a discipline-specific conference and present her research. Really neat thing for her. Actually, she just texted me the other day. She's starting her last year of her nurse practitioner program, which you get texts like that, and it's like, man, how cool is that she's been able to do that? So again, with the budget, and Baker pointed this out, but just to reiterate, you can't have dissemination and research in the same grant. So they've got to be separate grants. So even if you have money left over, you can't say, well, hey, I want to do this research, and then I'm also going to pay to go to this conference. Those need to be separate. The way we review them, dissemination grants, we review as they come in. So if you have a conference coming up, you think, hey, this would be a great opportunity for me to attend this conference. Again, justifying the need for you to be there, what is the project that you're taking, what you're going to get out of that conference. We review those immediately as they come in, so you can get those all the time. The conducting research, those come up about every month. We have 5 cycles that we do every year, so those ones you have to pay attention to those deadlines. Okay? The last thing I wanted to show you was just kind of as a faculty mentor, kind of what your responsibility is. And first, it's to guide in the process, but not to write the application. Okay, I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. What we are responsible for doing is just putting together some kind of support letter. And it doesn't need to be long, but it needs to cover a couple of things. So if you're working with a faculty advisor, make sure they know this is what it needs to include. If you are one, then this is what it should include, okay? One, we really like to know if this was a project that you conceived or that the student did, or what percentage of each, okay? That's something that is really, really important. Okay, another one is that kind of the budget and the hours are actually something that's believable. So we have to kind of rely on the faculty mentor to say, hey, if they said it's going to take 150 hours, it's going to take 150 hours. I can support that, and no questions there. That's always really, really nice to see in there. If the project does have the ability to go beyond the confines of UVU, I think that's a really nice, letting us know, hey, this is a really good project. They're going to be able to do this project. The last thing we want to do is give money to someone and have that money sit there and the project never gets off the ground. And so being able to let them know, hey, this is an engaged student. They're going to do this. I've reviewed, like so many of these grants. And when I see a letter from a faculty mentor that says, Baker is a great student, he worked really hard on this proposal, you should consider him for the grant, like the chances of them getting that grant are so slim, because I also know the way undergraduate student research works, you do need that support both ways. And so I want to see an engaged advisor who writes something more than a sentence. And I hopefully this doesn't open us up to like 3-page, faculty advisor letters of support. But be more thorough than they're nice, this is a good project, give them money. Okay, that's always a really nice thing. And honestly, I think that's about it. Again, our point of this is really just to help you know some of the ins and outs, some of what we're looking for as a committee. Typically, and actually, I'm gonna let's see if we can use what Baker taught us to get here, because I'd like to show you a few of these deadlines just so you're aware of them. Yeah. All right, student research, apply for funding. Am I doing good, Baker? Okay, cool. So let's go on more on ERSCA here. Okay. So here are the deadlines right here, okay, for you to be aware of. So you can see we try and do 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring, and then one kind of at the very end of the spring semester that's going to span like a summer project. That was something we saw a lot that had issues. So the first one is due October 12th. It is open now. As Baker talked about, if you start this process on October 9th, it's not going to get in by October 12th. Okay? So be forward thinking, get those things together. In terms of how long it takes us to get back to you, because I think that's always something that I'm thinking about as a professor. October 12th, we'll get stuff from the committee, usually by the end of that week. We're probably reviewing grants by 10 to 14 days after that. So honestly, probably by the end of October, those people would know if they're getting that money or not. So maybe a 2 or 3 week turnaround, I would say, maybe closer to the 2. If you do have a student who has a project where you think, man, they're a junior, they're going to do a bunch of stuff over the summer, that's why we have this one right here, which doesn't open until March 15th. That's our very last one. Every other grant, the way it works, you have to spend that money by June 30th because our financial years roll from July 1 to July 1. This one that's April 12th, this is the one that allows you to start utilizing funds starting in July of the next year, which is really nice because if you have one that you want to start early on in the fall semester or late in the summer, like this is your only real option to get funding at that time period. The grant that Baker's on right now is a little bit different. It's a year-long grant, but still come June 30th, that money is gone. And there's really nothing else to apply for after that. So the money does have to be used up by June 30th. So I did want to show you just those deadlines to be aware of. Again, the dissemination ones, we review on a rolling basis. So get those in whenever you'd like, and we can review those